everyone, and welcome to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And I wish everyone a great Sunday, and I hope that you're doing well. I want to come to you today, and I know by now most of you have heard about, of course, the tensions in Virginia and the new gun laws and the rally for the gun confiscation. It's a pretty hot button issue on many Americans' minds, and it's, of course, by now it's caught up to the rest of the country. So we're seeing, of course, other trends that are related to this type of infringement on the Second Amendment. Now, of course, you've heard the terms like sanctuaries and deputized, and all of these things are coming to mind. But for one, I would like to submit an actual definition for the red flag laws or red flag law. Now, this comes from generally just like a Wikipedia reference. It says that the red flag law is a gun control law that permits police or family members to petition a state court to order the temporary removal of firearms from a person who may present a danger to others or themselves. And I also would like to say that today's segment is brought to you mostly it will be brought to you by the TNA, the New American, and from there the second installment will just be commentary, and then I will tag out with some recommendations on civic and constitutional types of literacy. So yeah, we'll start there. Hope everybody's doing well. If you're out there, I welcome you. And it's always nice to hear your comments and say hi. So just on a housekeeping note, I always appreciate when you guys like, subscribe, and share, because there again, that helps me with suppression and all the things that are going on to suppress, of course, conservatives, American patriots, that kind of a bit. And so without further ado, I would like to bring you our piece today.
I'm Dr. Duke with the New American, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by two South Carolina state reps, because South Carolina is one of those states, I'm proud to say, that is really being very proactive about your Second Amendment rights. And we've got some really good men in very good positions down there, and I want to introduce you to two of them. I would like to introduce you first to Josiah Magnuson, who is the District Rep's 38th District in South Carolina, and Stuart Jones, who's the 14th District in South Carolina. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Duke. It's great to be here.
You guys are doing great work. Josiah, why don't you start and give us an update? I know we talked to Stuart a while ago. Go ahead and update us. What's the latest legislation that you're working on in the State House there to try to protect Second Amendment rights?
So Stuart Jones and I have introduced a bill called the Second Amendment Preservation Act. And what it would do, it would make all of South Carolina a sanctuary state. We're using the principle of anti-commandeering, that we're not going to enforce any unconstitutional federal action. So we're not going to allow state money to be used for gun control. We're not going to allow state personnel from state agencies to be used for gun control. We're going to just say the buck stops here. We're not going to allow anything that violates the Second Amendment in South Carolina in the future as of January 2020.
Josiah, before we move on to Stuart real quick, what do you think the odds are? What we don't know, for people who aren't watching or aren't up to date on South Carolina politics, if you get this through the House, what are the odds of it passing in the Senate there, and what's the odds that the governor will sign it?
So I think we got a lot of momentum right now. We've been able to push back against red flag laws. We certainly have a lot of attention right now on this issue, and a lot of people understand the need for it. So the hurdle is going to be getting it through the Senate. We've got some gun rights advocates over there, but we certainly need more. And but I think if we're able to get it through the House and the Senate, I'm sure that Governor McMaster would sign.
Stuart, you and I have talked before about this, and I remember when we talked a while ago. This whole process was beginning. Can you, for the people who saw that first interview, can
Hi,
you talk about what's
CLC in
different now, or
Florida.
where the process has evolved since the last time you and I talked about this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be back on your show, and some really positive things that happened with our letter that we had talked about. We sent
Hi,
this
Jeff
letter back in
B.
September to
Nice
the
to see
president,
you.
to our federal
Thanks for coming in,
delegation,
guys.
and explained to them the dangers of red flag laws and how limiting law-abiding people, free people, limiting their natural right to defend themselves is not a solution. And so what this has led to, the good thing is that they backed off of the red flag laws from pushing a federal red flag law, so to say. But the bad thing is that there's, of course, talk about pushing the funding to the states in order for the states to have their own red flag laws. Not only this, but also we're seeing a trend around the country, of course, where local government, we're having a lot of radical liberal local governments are trying to enact their own kind of gun confiscation methods and red flag laws. And so that has prompted us back in November, we pre-filed this bill, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which is H.
I agree. This topic should be a concern to all of
And
us,
what it
CLC in Florida.
does,
I
exactly
absolutely
as
agree.
Representative Magnuson was saying, this
Too many
bill
people are
actually
sleeping on
intervenes.
this
It says that our state
until
is
it's
not
on their
going
doorstep.
to take funding from the federal government to enforce red flag laws or any kind of gun confiscation, and nor are we going to devote our resources, so personnel, public resources. It also applies to the subdivisions of the state, so your local governments, your municipalities, counties, cities. This applies to them as well. So it gives us essentially another weapon, to fight gun control in South Carolina.
And I urge any of our listeners out there to go back to thenewamerican.com, the New American website, and you can see that earlier interview I did with Stuart that laid out in more detail that particular program. Let me ask you, Josiah. Obviously, the big hub, the big place in the country where the hot button issue about gun control is right now is Virginia. Virginia is a largely rural state, mostly conservative, but you've got Alexandria, you've got those suburbs near Dallas, near Washington D.C. And you've got all those Washington liberals who've moved into Virginia, who've turned it really almost a blue state. You've got one of the most anti-gun governors in Governor Northam there, and so that's where everybody's attention is paid. I'm very heartened by the fact that these counties all across Virginia have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries. Have you taken any lessons from them? You're being proactive in South Carolina, what I love. You're doing this before anyone forces you to. Virginia's got to respond. What have you learned from Virginia, or are you mirroring anything that they're trying to do there?
I think the biggest lesson that we can learn from Virginia, Duke, is that we have to stay involved and, as you mentioned, be proactive. Virginians, by and large,
It's scary,
get
CLC,
out and vote.
but it's
They
happening.
didn't, get to their legislature and support this type of legislation. So they're having to deal with it on the back end. What we need to do in South Carolina is citizens who support the Second Amendment need to stand up and vote for committed conservatives that will hold the Second Amendment as sacred and will defend the Constitution. We'll make that the priority, and then we need citizens to get involved behind this legislation. And we need to really just raise the standard now instead of waiting for to have to come back and defend later.
Josiah, are you seeing boots on the ground? Are you seeing local Tea Party groups, local gun rights groups? Have they rallied around you? Are you getting the kind of support from Second Amendment advocates that you need, or do you need more of them to come out still?
I think we definitely need more. I think that we've got some sort of Tea Party groups, liberty activists that are out there explaining this to people, but we need more. I think we need to get on talk radio. I think we need to get put the message out there, do some press conferences and things. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, but yes, the message is getting out, and I'm excited about the future as we go into this next legislative session.
Stuart, South Carolina, like Virginia, is very much a rural state, isn't it? And a state that has more traditional values, except outside the university town and the big cities. Is that a fair way to define what the demographics of South Carolina look like now?
It is. The one thing I would add to that is that there is, unfortunately, there's a lot of government officials, as we've talked about before, they don't get into government, they don't go into public office for the right reasons, to defend our Constitution, to defend our Bill of Rights, those natural rights which our founders fought for, and given to us from God, and so that's one thing. There's a lot of people being naive, I think, in government, and they'll say, well, we support the Second Amendment, we support the Bill of Rights, but we're not willing to take a stand on it. That's what a lot of them do. And I think, if anything, history has shown us, and what's going on in our country right now, we've got to take a stand. So I'm urging people to come to our delegation meeting, the Lawrence County delegation meeting, tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the old Lawrence County Courthouse to speak, and we've gotten a lot of good response. There's a lot of people planning to come and speak and say that South Carolina needs to be a gun, Second Amendment sanctuary, and needs to defend the Bill of Rights.
I agree, CLC.
And if you were going to counsel, Stuart, people who wanted to support you, not just in South Carolina, but outside of South Carolina as well, who would you have them write? Who would you have them send an email or a letter or a phone call to? What would be the best way, you think, to try to rile this up and get more voices speaking out for what you're doing in South Carolina?
Yeah. In South Carolina, I would go speak at city council meetings, county council meetings. I would approach your elected officials and ask them to get on board with this. And that's one really good thing we're seeing, is that people, from what's going on in Virginia, unfortunately, in their state legislature, the good thing is that people are getting really active. So I think we can be proactive about it and pass 4704. Constitutional carry is also, I really hope 2020 is the year for constitutional carry in South Carolina, and that's one more thing we can do to defend our Bill of Rights and allow people to take part in their natural right to defend themselves.
Josiah, we have about a time for one last final sentence from you. Give it to us.
Stand up for the Constitution and stand up for the Second Amendment and join us in the fight.
Josiah Magnuson, Stuart Jones, two really, really up-and-coming, important representatives from the state of South Carolina, the front lines of this. If you want your Second Amendment rights, help these guys out. Thanks, gentlemen.
Okay. So, as you can see, you see that South Carolina is taking a very proactive approach. They're front-loading their measures to defend and to protect the Second Amendment right. And I would encourage, everybody can do the same thing. It's not just, you don't have to be a sitting official to make a difference. And I think that's the part that we're kind of falling down on is, we're falling down in the sense that we're not really being taught we're not really being taught civics in the classrooms anymore. We're not really being taught, the civic knowledge. But, at this point, it's not enough just to know your rights. It's really not. And I think, unfortunately, that's why some of these things are happening. Now, I just want to add I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. But yes, I'm just doing, here's my little installment for this particular stream. And I appreciate everybody for being here. I hope I did not miss anyone, but I'm happy that you guys are here and sharing your time wherever available. I really appreciate that. What I also wanted to say was that we have, it's not here again, as I was saying, that you don't have to be a city official in order to get involved. I mean, we have, you can be active and involved all year long. I mean, unfortunately, I think some people just kind of go out and they just vote. And unfortunately, when they do that, they're not really even doing that with any authority, because many people are so misinformed that they're not really doing themselves, or even their local government or state or federal, they're not doing themselves or any of these institutions any good, because they're misinformed, they're uninformed. Not only do they not have the civic knowledge, but they don't have the they're not they're not reliant, they're not self-reliant, they're not self-assertive when they go into that voting booth. And you have to, that's the type of voter that needs to go into the voting booth. It's the one that, you don't, you got to rely on your knowledge. If you don't know something, you need to look it up. I would say, for one, not just, you can go, of course, to your city council meetings, but also, check your, not only city council, but check what your local, your gun clubs or whatnot. If you're not a member of one by now, I would think that you might want to join one, because those people are going to know what's going on. Even your gun range, because that's where the laws are, they're hitting some of these gun ranges and places so hard with these changes, and they're so quick. It's being reactionary is the way we seem to be going as American citizens, law-abiding citizens. We're being reactionary, and that is not going to get it. It's not. I mean, hi Jeff B. I'm going to read comments. It says the law works like this. I can say, oh no. Okay, I will read some of the previous messages. Says we have to know our rights and how to fight for them. Of course, right on CLC, all of the elected officials' phone numbers should be in our contacts and used often. Right. So that you kind of you gave me a good segue into the next segment, as I am all about the constitutional voting index, or the constitutional voting transcripts for all of these politicians. You can see what their records are, how they're voting on these bills. You can see that if they're not voting, if they have a low percentage, then these are not the people that you want. These are not the people that you want to elect, whether it's in the primaries or whether general election. You don't want to vote for people that have poor constitutional voting records. Now, we looked at Rand Paul the other night, if anybody watched the video or anything, but Rand Paul has consistently had a voting record which has been pretty high. And then that's also, when I look at somebody like Rand Paul, which I'm not a loyalist to Rand Paul, but I'm saying when I look at a Rand Paul and then I look at a Matt Gaetz. So let's just for example, let's go to Matt Gaetz for just a second, if you don't mind. I'm going a little bit off script here, but we're all in this together, so let's do it. I want to see what Matt Gaetz is. If you don't know, Matt Gaetz voted with the Democrats. He cited that he was doing it he mentioned, balance of power. Okay, he mentioned the Constitution. So I just want to see really quickly, how has Mr. Gaetz been actually voting? If I'm not mistaken, he may not quite be a Rand Paul, but he's going to need to defend. If he's a real constitutionalist, then we should see high numbers in all of his voting, not just AUMFs and that kind of a bit. Okay, so here we go. We're here at, this is from the New American. That's the source that I'm bringing to you. Give me just 1 second here. Let's see. Okay, so we just have a quick look here at Matt Gaetz. We're looking at him. You can see on your screen, Matt Gaetz is from Florida, District 1. He's Republican, and he has a cumulative index score of 73. So I don't know where Mr. Gaetz stands in Florida on these issues, because that's not my area. So I'm not really familiar with where he stands. But this is the kind of thing that people need to start looking at these records, because they tell you who's defending the country and who's letting it go to the globalists and worse, who's letting it go to who's ready to hand it off to socialism or communism or whatever. I mean, I like to quote the president when he mentioned Elizabeth Warren, saying she's a socialist or worse. That's a paraphrase on that quote, but I'm thinking a lot of these people have more socialist voting records, and those are not the people that are going to protect or defend. At this point, we're defending. It's remarkable. We are actually defending the Constitution right now from a group of people who mock and laud Constitution all day in those impeachment hearings every single day. I've never heard the Constitution mentioned so many times as I heard in those impeachment hearings and the impeachment inquiry. And I would and I'm hearing it, we're hearing it now. When the Senate trial starts, we're going to probably hear it then. But that's not they're everything but constitutional. They're not. They work outside of that oath all of the time. And this Northam governor, he's a real he's a real walking contradiction too. He's so worried about life, but he's all about abortion on the other hand. He's worried about gun laws and yeah, it's kind of amazing. So here you go. Back to this constitutional voting record deal. This is Matt Gaetz. I don't know if there are any, but I know that these gun measures are going to come up. These gun measures are going to come up. I mean, this is just an example. Short-term appropriations, budget deals, and they'll tell you whether it's a good vote or not. The New American they've come up with their formula for constitutional. They've been doing this for 50 plus years. That's why I believe it's a very, very trusted source. They believe in less government and they fight for American sovereignties. They've exposed a lot between administrations. They do it on a regular basis. So I think it's pretty trusted. I think to me it is. In fact, I do believe, I'll tell you, I'll go into that another time. I won't go there. So here we are. HR 8. Here we are. This is Matt Gaetz's page. Firearms background check. Now this was a vote. This was done in earlier 2019, February 27th. So you can see, so you're already seeing, you're already seeing things that have been voted on almost within the last year. So you can see the way these people are in your area are voting. I would go check their profiles on your city.govs. Go in there and check. I mean, whatever you need to do. I mean, Matt Gaetz, I got to tell you, Matt Gaetz's record is not bad. But here again, let's look at Rand Paul real quick. I'm saying, like, Rand Paul always, if he takes a position that's opposite of the president, he's already got this record for being, for having his constitutional values. And as you can see, Rand Paul, a senator from Kentucky's Republican, his cumulative score is 94%. Now, I'm going to look real quick and see what he voted. I would assume that he voted similarly on the last gun resolution that's listed or similar here. Or either you guys can do that. I just want to let you know that this is actually, I think it's a real resource. It's, you don't have to go in and be intimidated by the process, because I'm telling you that, I see your message here. Matt Gaetz is the Florida Panhandle, in the Florida Panhandle area. And I see CLC says there are so many wolves in sheep's clothing. Yes. CLC says I keep close eye on our reps vote. I was on Marco Rubio all the time. Good. And then, I'll tell you something else. This particular site, the New American, you can also just go on to, there is a tool inside of that particular website where you don't have to even keep resending the same email to the same person. You can almost blast all the representatives, all the relative representatives in your area at one time. You can either do it, there's a way to copy paste it, and then there's a way to just blast them at one time. It's already pre-filled for you. So maybe one day we'll kind of go through some of that. I just think that these are the tools that we need. I think these are the tools that we need, and luckily we have a source that provides that. Most people don't are not familiar with it. Some people are not, some people are. But in a civic society, we have grassroots, and I think grassroots, it starts with the law-abiding citizens. Sometimes if you don't find what you need, if you have the time or, some extra time, I mean, maybe you want to organize your own group and see how it grows from there. Even if it's just family members or friends or neighbors. I mean, you might start a committee or something or and appoint some people to maybe step up and do comments, maybe in your city council meetings, or, you could do many things. But I just think that we've conceded too much. When you don't say anything, you concede, or you either complicit, or they just go ahead and make decisions. The city councils and your governments, they just go ahead and make decisions without you. They don't, it's not, they, well, nobody showed up at this meeting, so we're going to just go ahead and do what we were going to do. Otherwise, you have stakeholders they'll be making facilitating private partnerships, and they'll be speaking up for their interest. But then for the citizens that are not there, you can't be represented if your voice is not heard, and you're not making any extra efforts other than just knowing the right. So civic knowledge matters, but we need to do a lot more. So it's this CLC in Florida. I also like Numbers website for this type of info. What I will do, I will load some of this information into the box. I will put it into the info box so that you can go on and just access it anytime you want, because they update this voting record, this constitutional voting record, I think pretty regularly. It's kind of done on a quarterly, like, kind of a basis. So I mean, if you're in South Carolina, that particular interview is very pertinent to your area. I mean, they gave a lot of great information. So, and then again, here it is, the county seats and your city seats. That's where a lot of things start. Of course, we have, the top, we have the federal, but, that's a more remote position for us to try to aim from. But at least, you try to start out, see what's going on in the local and city level first. And then maybe we can work. If you get an appointee, then that's when you can start maybe reaching for the next level, the top. Okay, I'm going to read some comments here from CLC. Jeff, same here, voted for him, but disagreed with a lot of his votes. Okay, so yeah, but I was just checking in to see what you guys are saying here in the chat. I appreciate you guys for being here. And yeah, so I'm just trying to, whenever I get information, I like to share it. And it's nice to see other states being proactive about it. I mean, I don't know if anybody could see this coming, that, we were going to be faced with, being disarmed, and some, at large, a big picture, being disarmed by our own government. I think that we have, I mean, to me, we have a unique opportunity already, we have the right to vote. But if we arm ourselves with knowledge, then that's the authority that you go in that booth with, and you go in with not only your civic knowledge, knowing your rules and the rights, but you also go in with, you go in with what you know about knowing about the measures that are happening in your local area, so that when you see a bill or a measure or a proposal, even if you go to some of these city council meetings, you'll head that proposal or that particular measure off before it ever hits the ballot. Sometimes they don't, they present things in city council that don't quite make it onto the ballot. So you could be a part of that. You can say, hey, well, this is what they were proposing, but luckily it didn't make the ballot, or I was there to speak out against, this particular measure, because they wanted to add this one too. So, yeah, but, like I said, I don't think that they're doing a very good job, or I don't think they're doing a job at all with doing not only civic literacy, or even just teaching civics anymore. I even heard, like all this stuff that we're seeing now, this whole trend of all the Marxism, all the protesting, all the isms, the feminism, the of course, just all these little pockets of isms popping up everywhere. They tried this stuff in the 60s, and it just seems like like, what was it, the student movement? It started with the colleges. It started with the colleges. I appreciate that at CLC in Florida. It started with it started the 60s, like they had, you had all these liberal studies that sprung out. I did another video on the Frankfurt School, the German schools. That's when that whole taking over of the schools. And, it's like on steroids now. Like they figured out a way to divide us even more. Like the spectrum is even deeper. The scope is even bigger on the division. But the whole 1960s bit was, you had the liberal studies, the liberation theories, you had, African American studies, Chicano studies, you had women's studies, liberal studies, you had, it was forever and ever. Like LGBT, that stuff started back in the 60s, and now here we are again. And it's pretty much destroying, and it's been in the works for a long time. It's a whole, like, indoctrination of America. Yeah, so I just encourage everybody to get involved wherever you can. If you have the time, if you can go to one of your city council meetings, I would encourage you to go. If you can get there to make your comments during the meeting. I mean, I will tell you, for one, there's one little project that I might go to. I'm not a parent, but the whole thing with the drag queen story time is an issue. They don't have enough people. I heard that, they don't have enough people to even go to that. I'm like, wait a minute. You don't have enough people. This is drag queen story time and this new sexualization kind of curriculum that they're adding. But nobody has time. I mean, if you concede on these little things, that's how these liberal movements and these progressive movements grow into, big impact destruction, is because, it's getting by. I mean, everybody's busy, but then, it's just like it's out of control by the time you realize it. They slide it right by. And I do believe that this 2A thing is only going to get more extensive. Okay, so I'm just reading this here from CLC in Florida. And the backbone of America sit by and let it happen. I tried to get my family to stand against it, but after a week or two, they would always stop being active. Well, I know. I get exactly where you're coming from. I mean, yeah, a lot of things are getting into, and see, here again, this comes from the UN Agenda 2030. And of course, the liberals, the Democrats are in full step with the UN. So whatever they want to push, and then of course the teachers' unions. So the conservatives, we need more movements. We need to be talking about this thing, and we need to let them know you're not, we need to make it known. We're not going to sit back and just watch you guys try to implement these things into the schools, but then, like I said, that's that thing about the whole drag queen story time. That's another topic for me. And I'll do that another time, but I'm just saying this particular measure, I'm even thinking of going to like my own gun club, because they already know, like in the state of California, you can't buy ammunition. You can't buy more than, because you're getting a background check every time you pick up a round, basically. So yeah, those are things, but I'm sure there's probably some other things coming down the pike. And yeah, so once again, I appreciate everybody for being here. And also, if you would just, always put your comments and your concerns or whatever, things that are important to you. Because believe it or not, we're all in this together. And it's going to be the Americans that are going to either take the nation back or stabilize the nation, because we are on, I think, as they say, a lot of people are waking up. We're on the brink of like, just not, yeah, people can't even believe that it's the US, a lot of these things that are going on. But I'll try to bring you panels that are relevant, and even like I'll be installing a call in kind of platform for this particular stream. That may probably happen first, but then I'll have some other people to come on, and then there'll be ways that you guys can come on in the near future. So if you want to be on the lookout for that, I really appreciate it. And I will read one more comment. CLC in Florida. I was at my daughter's school every week about some liberal garbage they were trying to teach her. Right. I don't blame you. Yeah, it's just, yeah, you have to, because the thing about it is CLC, out here, they were saying, oh, well, if you got a good principal, he might tell you who's coming to read to your kids, or they might not. So basically what they're saying, they're not even sending any letters home to let you know that that your children are being subjected to any type of, to me, what I consider perversion. They're not they're not going to tell you. And so yeah, there you have it. So it's the same here with the schools. Yeah, so once again, I appreciate it. And then if you guys have anything else, but yes, I will be back at another time, and I would like to thank everybody who made it here, and for those people that are out working hard, I really appreciate you for taking the time to hang out here and give your comments and feedback. And I will see you next time on Black Spring with Autumn.